For thousands of years, people believed they could literally stand in the presence of a god. They entered a dark chamber, smelled cedar smoke and roasted meat, and faced a body of wood, stone, or gold that had been washed, dressed, fed, and awakened. The god had eyes. The god had a house. The god occupied an address. So why did humanity slowly begin worshiping a god it could no longer see? And what changed when the holiest presence on earth became invisible? To ask that question, we have to resist a modern mistake. Ancient worshippers were not necessarily confusing sculpture with biology. A sacred image could be material and more than material at once. A vessel, manifestation, interface, or body through which divine power became locally available. The categories varied across cultures, and no single theory explains them all, but the pattern is unmistakable. Across much of the ancient world, divinity was not merely believed. It was installed, approached, carried, hidden, revealed, and maintained. In Mesopotamia, a city's central temple was commonly understood as the household of its patron deity. The towering complex did more than symbolize civic pride. It organized land, labor, offerings, festivals, and political legitimacy around a divine resident. Deep inside, the cult image occupied a restricted chamber. Most people may never have seen it directly, yet its concealed presence shaped the city outside, like a silent sovereign behind walls whose needs governed an entire economy. Ritual texts describe ceremonies often called the washing and opening of the mouth. Craftsmen made an image, but ritual separated it from ordinary manufacture and prepared it to receive divine presence. The statue could then be clothed in costly garments, adorned with jewelry, served food, and taken in procession. Scholars debate exactly how ancient participants understood the relation between deity and image. What the evidence does not support is the dismissive idea that they simply mistook carved matter for a god. The daily meal offered to a deity was not empty theater. It enacted a relationship of dependency, reciprocity, hierarchy, and care. Humans supplied bread, beer, incense, meat, music, and praise. The gods were expected to preserve order, fertility, victory, and protection. Sacrifice made divine presence social. It converted invisible obligation into visible smoke, shared food, priestly labor, and public memory. A god who ate in the temple was not an abstract principle. That God belonged to the city, and the city belonged to the god. Egypt developed its own theology of presence. Temple inscriptions and surviving ritual scenes show priests opening shrines, purifying sacred space, presenting offerings, clothing images, and restoring order day after day. The cult statue was not the totality of the deity, but it could serve as a physical locus where the deity became accessible. The innermost sanctuary was designed less like a public auditorium than a protected chamber. Divine visibility was powerful precisely because access to it was controlled. This complicates the very idea of visible gods. The most sacred image might remain hidden from almost everyone. Its presence was visible through consequences, processions, festivals, oracles, temple wealth, royal authority, and the disciplined movements of priests. Visibility did not mean constant exposure. It meant that divine power had a place where it could appear. The closed doors of the sanctuary did not prove absence. They made the presence inside more dangerous, concentrated, and politically valuable. In Greece, temples likewise sheltered cult images, while sacrifice usually occurred at an altar outside. Athena could be encountered through her monumental image on the Athenian Acropolis, yet Greek religion was never limited to statues. Gods marked springs, groves, caves, boundary stones, storms, and peaks. A sanctuary joined story to landscape. The mountain was not merely a backdrop for belief. Its height, isolation, weather, and difficulty helped the human body experience distance from ordinary life. Rome absorbed and transformed many Mediterranean practices. Cult statues stood in temples. Household gods guarded domestic life. Imperial images connected political loyalty with ritual honor. Roman authors could speak skeptically about myths while still participating in public rites. This is crucial. Philosophical doubt did not immediately empty the temples. People can criticize one explanation of a ritual and continue performing it because the ritual also preserves ancestry, civic identity, family duty, and the fragile feeling that the world remains ordered. Across South Asia, Divine images developed within traditions too varied to compress into a single line. In many Hindu contexts, darshan names the reciprocal act of seeing and being seen by a deity. The image is consecrated, tended, ornamented, fed, awakened, and put to rest. At the same time, the Upanishads explored ultimate reality as Brahman, deeper than any single form, intimately related to the self, and difficult to capture in ordinary language. Form and formlessness did not simply replace one another, they coexisted. Buddhist traditions offer another warning against a simple march from idols to abstraction. Early Buddhist art sometimes represented the Buddha through footprints, an empty throne, a tree, or a wheel, though scholars dispute whether this should be called a strict aniconic phase. Later traditions produced vast numbers of Buddha and Bodhisattva images. Buddhism could analyze the instability of all forms while filling temples with forms that focused memory, devotion, merit, and contemplation. An image may point beyond itself without becoming irrelevant. In Mesoamerica, temples, mountains, caves, rain, maze, ancestors, rulers, and sacred time were woven into locally distinct religious worlds. Monumental architecture could make a city resemble a cosmic landscape. Images and offerings helped renew relationships among human communities, divine forces, and the dead. But here, the evidence demands restraint. Conquest destroyed texts, objects, buildings, and living institutions, while colonial accounts filtered indigenous traditions through hostile categories. Comparison can reveal patterns, but it can also erase difference. Why did rivers, trees, caves, mountains, and celestial bodies so often become sacred? Anthropology offers several possibilities, none sufficient alone. Such places control water, orientation, food, danger, seasonal change, and movement. They overwhelm human scale. Cognitive theories suggest that people readily detect agency and intention in ambiguous events, but that does not prove religion was caused by a single mental error. Ecology, ritual, politics, memory, emotion, and perception reinforce one another. A sacred place anchors an invisible story to a repeatable sensation. Cold air rises from a cave. Thunder gathers around a summit. A river disappears and returns. The sun dies at the horizon and arrives again. These experiences do not logically demonstrate gods, yet they make transcendence imaginable through the body. Before doctrine becomes a sentence, it may begin as vertigo, gratitude, terror, dependence, or the suspicion that the landscape is looking back. Then, in several regions during the first millennium BCE, religious and philosophical thinkers began asking whether the divine could really be confined to an image, a city, or even the visible cosmos. This development is sometimes grouped under the label Axial Age, associated with transformations in Greece, Israel, India, China, and elsewhere. The label remains disputed. The changes were not simultaneous, uniform, or caused by one event. Still, older ritual orders increasingly faced criticism from reflective traditions capable of judging them from a claimed higher standpoint. Greek criticism was sharp long before Christianity. Xenophanes mocked the human tendency to imagine gods in human shape, observing that different peoples pictured divinity like themselves. Plato did not simply erase the gods, but he redirected attention toward intelligible reality, enduring forms, and a highest good beyond ordinary perception. In the Timaeus, a divine craftsman orders the cosmos according to an intelligible model. The visible world becomes meaningful partly because it participates in a reality that vision alone cannot reach. Aristotle pushed in another direction. His unmoved mover is not a temple resident with appetites, anger, or a biography. It is eternal actuality, the ultimate object of desire and thought. The Stoics, by contrast, often describe divine reason as immanent within the cosmos, ordering matter from within rather than standing outside it. Philosophy did not produce one invisible God. It generated competing ways to detach divinity from the vulnerable body of a statue while preserving rational order, purpose, or sacred unity. These ideas did not immediately defeat traditional religion. Plato could criticize poetic myths while Greek cities continued sacrifices. Stoic thinkers could reinterpret Zeus as cosmic reason while public cult endured. The shift was therefore less like a light switched off than a double exposure. Old gods remained in marble, smoke, festival, and oath, while a more abstract divine principle emerged behind them. For centuries, people inhabited both worlds at once. Ancient Israel presents one of the most consequential struggles over divine visibility. The Hebrew Bible prohibits making an image for worship and repeatedly attacks idols. Yet the same texts describe God appearing in fire, cloud, glory, dreams, visions, and a voice from the sanctuary. Archaeology and inscriptions indicate that Israelite and Judahite religion developed within the wider West Semitic world and was not uniformly aniconic or exclusively monotheistic from the beginning. The biblical polemics themselves preserve evidence of practices reformers opposed. The destruction of Jerusalem and exile in the 6th century BCE intensified a question with enormous consequences. If the temple was ruined and the people displaced, where was their God? Biblical texts answer in different voices, but some make a radical claim. Israel's deity was not defeated because divine sovereignty was never limited to one building or territory. A portable identity could be organized around covenant, law, memory, prayer, and text. Catastrophe did not necessarily kill presence. It could force presence to migrate. Yet the Jerusalem temple remained central after the exile, and Judaism never became simply anti-place or anti-ritual. Pilgrimage, sacrifice, sacred time, and the holiness of the sanctuary continued. The Dead Sea Scrolls reveal communities interpreting purity, covenant, angels, and an approaching divine order in intensely concrete ways. The historical transformation was therefore not a clean replacement. A visible religion by invisible belief. It was a renegotiation of where divine presence could dwell, and who could claim access to it. Christianity inherited this tension and made it stranger. Its scriptures speak of an invisible God, yet center salvation on incarnation, the claim that the divine became flesh in Jesus. Early Christians could reject cult statues while venerating a human life, a cross, bread and wine, water, relics, martyrs' tombs, and eventually icons. The new faith did not escape matter. It rearranged matter around a paradox. God could not be captured by an image, yet God had allegedly entered history with a face. Debates over images therefore returned inside Christianity with extraordinary force. Some believers feared that sacred pictures repeated idolatry. Others argued that depicting Christ defended the reality of incarnation. Centuries later, iconoclasts broke images and defenders kissed them, each side claiming to protect the true relation between visible matter and invisible divinity. The argument was never merely about art. It concerned whether absence is more faithful than presence, and whether a representation becomes a window, a memory, or a rival god. Neoplatonism gave late antiquity one of its most powerful languages of transcendence. Plotinus described all reality as proceeding from the one, beyond ordinary being and thought. The material world was not simply evil, but ultimate reality could not be pictured as a larger object somewhere in space. As Platonist concepts entered Jewish, Christian, and later Islamic thought through complex roots, theologians gained philosophical tools for describing a God who was simple, immaterial, timeless, and radically beyond creatures. But transcendence carried a psychological cost. A local God can be approached at a local shrine. An invisible universal God cannot be escaped by crossing a border or closing a temple door. If divine authority is everywhere, the sacred moves inward. Intention matters. Conscience matters. Hidden conduct matters. This did not happen in one moment, and moral interiority existed in many earlier traditions. Still, invisible sovereignty could intensify the sense that a person remained observed even in solitude. Cognitive science and psychology can describe parts of this effect without deciding whether any God exists. Humans are sensitive to watchedness, reputation, agency, and social judgment. Some experiments suggest that cues of observation can influence behavior, though effects vary and should not be inflated into a universal explanation of religion. The more careful hypothesis is cultural. Traditions can recruit ordinary social capacities and attach them to unseen agents, moral rules, ancestors, texts, and institutions. Invisible authority also changes who controls access. When a god inhabits a statue, priests may guard the chamber and offerings. When God is said to transcend every image, interpreters of revelation, law, doctrine, and conscience may become the new gatekeepers. Material mediation does not disappear, it changes form. Scrolls, books, pulpits, architecture, Vestments, screens, and trained voices still shape what cannot be seen. Even iconoclasm produces objects: the empty wall, the unadorned room, the sacred page. This is why monotheism alone cannot explain the transition. Philosophical abstraction developed in polytheistic cultures. Hindu traditions joined transcendent metaphysics to vibrant image worship. Buddhism could deny a creator god while building monumental sacred landscapes. Christianity proclaimed an invisible god while defending incarnation and sacrament. Different societies made overlapping moves for different reasons: conquest, migration, literacy, empire, philosophical debate, reform, institutional competition, and the human need to preserve divine power when sacred places fail. Nor should we imagine that visible divinity vanished. Believers still travel to mountains, touch shrines, face sacred directions, light candles, kiss icons, carry statues, bathe in rivers, gather around relics, and expect particular rooms to feel different from ordinary space. Protestants who reject sacred images may experience a Bible, a sanctuary, or communal music as a concentrated presence. Secular people also stand silently before monuments, graves, flags, artworks, and landscapes that seem to contain more than their materials. Perhaps the deeper transformation was not from presence to absence, but from one technology of presence to another. The ancient statue localized the god in a body that could be clothed and fed. Philosophical theology located divinity beyond bodies. Scripture localized authority in words. Ritual relocated presence into repeated action. Conscience made the unseen witness intimate. Each solution answered an old problem and created a new one. How can something beyond the world become present without becoming merely another object inside it? Historians can document temples, images, inscriptions, offerings, prohibitions, destruction layers, philosophical arguments, and institutional change. They cannot excavate the private experience of every worshiper, and they cannot verify theological claims about whether a deity ever inhabited an image or transcended one. Philosophers can test concepts. Theologians can interpret revelation. Psychology can study perception and behavior. None of these disciplines alone can close the question that ancient people opened in the dark. So the gods did not become invisible on a single day. Some were hidden before they were abstract. Some remained embodied after transcendence was proclaimed. Some were destroyed by conquerors, rejected by reformers, translated into philosophy, or carried into new lands as memory. What changed was the map of the sacred. Divinity could move from statue to cosmos, from temple to text, from mountain to mind, and sometimes return to stone whenever invisible distance became unbearable. And that leaves us with an unsettling possibility. Modern believers may say they no longer expect a god to walk out of a sanctuary, yet they still search for signs, voices, coincidences, presence, and places where the ordinary world feels thin. Perhaps humanity never stopped wanting to see the divine. Perhaps we learned to call the seeing inward. If you want more investigations into the hidden history and psychology of belief, subscribe to Unmasking the Gods. And remember, the greatest mystery may not be why humanity stopped seeing the gods, but whether we simply began looking somewhere else.